Hi everyone, this is Mariëlle and this is a new heart-to-heart episode with, and I'm gonna say it wrong again because
You can't say it wrong.
we just tried it a million times. And that's the thing I now know. It's the same, like I introduced myself in the least Dutch way possible. Okay, so today I am joined by oh my God. Roland Denzel is how he would
Yes,
say.
you got it.
Oh,
Success.
see, people, practice does make perfect. It takes about, what is it, 10,000 hours? Okay, so we got that out of the way. Thank you all for joining us. Today we're going to talk about, well, as you all know, writing is not, how am I going to say that? Mentally, writing seems like a very healthy thing to do. I mean, when I don't write, I don't feel good about myself. But physically, that's a whole different story because, you know, many writers are glued to their screen. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll let Roland introduce himself a little bit more about the work he does, and then we'll just have a nice conversation about how writers can become a bit more healthy, or as you would coin it, probably more indestructible.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Roland Denzel, and I am a writer of mostly of nonfiction so far. I've got some secret urban fantasy stuff in the works, but I've got 6 books: health and fitness and wellness, and I write primarily co-write with my wife, who is a restorative exercise specialist and a trauma therapist. So we kind of, she handles a lot of the physical stuff and a lot of the emotional stuff, and I handle most of the nutrition and the habit building aspects of it. So together we coach, and we have our website, eatmovelive52.com. And then me personally, I work with authors and small business people, a lot of nonfiction authors, to sort of build their brands and stay healthy doing it.
Okay, so how did you get to do this work? Just so first, like in general, but also like how did that branch off into helping authors specifically?
Well, in general, so if you go way back in time, like I grew up sort of chubby and overweight, very sedentary, and when I was about 35, I decided to make a change. I'm 52 now, and I had to make this change and figured out how could I lose the weight, get fit, and then never gain it back, because I had yo-yoed many times over the years. 35 years, a lot of times to yo-yo. And I was just done. I'm like, I am fed up with this. I want to figure out a way. So I started to put systems in place so that not only would I have a plan, but if the plan started to like fall apart, like I didn't like it, I would come up with a new plan before I ever abandoned the new plan. So I think this rolling system, right, was sort of my secret. So that's one secret. The other secret was uncoupling my happiness from my desire to lose weight. So I always thought, gosh, I'm lonely and sad. If I could just lose the weight, I'd be happy. But most people know once they get to that point, you lose like 20 pounds and you know, you start to realize that it's just that's not really going to happen. And then you just throw your plan out the window and go back to eating or being sedentary or emotional eating or whatever.
Yeah.
So I decided to uncouple those things. So those two things were really my key. So 17 years later, here I am, still, you know, healthy, fit, and lean. And I have not yo-yoed during that time. I've just kind of, you know, lost the weight and I've kept it off and, you know, managed to fit this into my sort of a healthy lifestyle. And over time, I really got very interested. I had a desk job. I was in the computers. I was in the publishing industry for 26 years as a printing and publishing specialist and a consultant. And it was very much sitting at a desk, driving from customer to customer. So everything was sitting or standing in one place, like in front of like a console. And so I really got passionate about taking care of my own health and wellness during this job, and started, you know, writing about it and blogging about it just on a personal note. Then I started to get more education in it. And then I met the woman who is now my wife, who was, we met online in the old-fashioned way, where you're both writing on a forum and you see each other, and then you start PMing and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then once we met in person, we decided to write a book together. She as the expert, because she owned a gym in Bulgaria, and I as the person who had gone through it all. So we wanted to have, I could take those two things and write a book about it. And we did. We fell in love. We got together. She moved to America, and we've been together ever since. And just continued to build our business from the health and wellness perspective there. And then over time, I wrote more and more books. You know, as most authors do, they start friending more authors on Facebook and on Twitter, and they would come to me and, hey, how can I, you know, I have a backache. You know, it's like neck. I don't know if you can see it. Like a lot of people get this thing where they're like really like leaning forward, right, with the neck. Yeah. Or hands, you know, hands and wrists and shoulders and migraines and all these things. So a lot of people would come to me with that. So I started to work with them just on a case-by-case basis, an individual basis, because, you know, authors are human and I work with humans, right? But I've recently started to sort of tailor my program specifically to authors as well, because authors want to be, they want to be healthy because they want to write longer or more and get more words out, but they also want to be productive and they want to take care of their mental faculties as well, and not just, so it's just a little bit different. So they have more specific needs. They don't all want to lose weight. They don't all need to lose weight. But we do, like you said, your eyes glued to the screen. An even bigger problem is our butts glued to the chair, right? So in order to get a lot of words out, you either have to be sedentary, mostly. Yeah.
Well, what I see, because this discussion's been up for quite a bit, right? Like we've had, and I know in the specifically, I think in the US, it's very popular to have not just a standing desk, but like the ones with the treadmill.
Yeah, I think they were popular. I've never actually seen one in real life,
I don't
but I
hear
have
anybody
heard
about it anymore. It's like it died. Like it's
really hard to walk and write at the same time. So
yes,
some people can do it. But just like if you go to the gym, and like if you don't have a treadmill, try to go to the gym and like try to type a note to yourself on your phone while you're walking, and like it's hard because it's harder than chewing gum and walking at the same time, right? Yeah. Because you have this coordination and stuff too. Yeah. And so some people did have success with it, but I think with the rise of dictation, a lot of people who really wanted to do a treadmill desk, they're like, well, you know, maybe I could just dictate instead.
Yeah, that is, and I think a lot of people, like I still have to get into dictation. I recently started, because it was never my thing, but what I have random, we all do, all writers do, we have the most bizarre random thoughts or like sparks in the most inconvenient places. For me, it's always the shower, for example, or always when I'm washing the dishes, like when there is water involved.
Interesting.
I will have an idea. So what I started doing, I use Evernote on my phone, which is then connected to my computer. So what I started doing with literally since last week, I realized, oh wait, there is a, I can actually record in this thing. Yeah. So the only issue I now have is that when I'm doing the dishes, where do I actually put my phone? Because the screen, you cannot just like say record, like there's probably something that I can use for that, but for Evernote, it was just like a quick fix for me, right? I'm like, like if I don't say this, I don't want to stop doing the dishes, but if I don't, like, I'm going to lose this thought, right? Yeah, so yeah. I realized you have to keep this, you cannot lock the screen and like put it in your pocket. Like it has to stay open. So I was like, where do I put it? So that was a bit like, I was like, you know, like weirdly washing the dishes. But yes, I recently started doing that. I haven't gotten into it, but I think dictation, a lot of people do that so that they can, you know, get away from the screen.
Well, do you dictate into Evernote, or do you do a voice recording into Evernote?
That's the thing. I don't dictate. I just go, okay, so I was thinking this for this next blog post or for this book I'm writing. Like I have so many books on the back burner. For this book, I was just thinking this will make a great chapter and this is what I want to say and I want to reference this. So it's more, instead of, usually I would like dry my hands and just put Evernote, like open Evernote and start typing it. And that can be like, I can be in the middle of my living room and just start typing, just like my whole body goes like, so now I was like, no, let's just see if I can keep doing what I was doing. So I did the same, like I tend to walk to the beach a lot. And I also did that, like I had an idea, I stopped walking and started typing. So I've been trying to teach myself over the past, maybe it's been 2 weeks. Like if I have an idea, just grab my phone, I just talk into it, I give it a name, and then just you can keep the movement going and don't go into this, shoulders hunched.
Yeah. It is hard. Like when like the dishes in the shower is an unusual challenge because your hands are wet. Like you don't want to touch something, right? But even though
I do have a waterproof phone.
Okay.
But still.
Yeah, mine is too, but it's like I don't know that I want to have it.
Yeah, you can't use it. But I could dry my hands and type something and then but it's not the most convenient.
Yeah. So we talked earlier before we started about neither of us having an Alexa or a smart home device, right? But in theory, that could be like the solution to say, Alexa, take a note. And
so maybe we'll bring Alexa into the shower with us.
Or maybe, so yeah, you could have an Alexa in there, like they have those little small ones now that you can put in more locations that are less expensive. So you could have, and some of them have switches on them. So like when you don't want that, you can turn it off. So you could have, I could see the point of having one of those near the kitchen.
Yeah, so
right. There's one that I saw that plugs right into, at least in an American socket. I'm assuming they have them with the European sockets as well. But they plug in directly to the electrical socket, and then it has another plug in it as well. So it's like it doesn't block the other thing. Yeah. But then it's near the sink, or it would be near wherever you plug something in the bathroom. So that might be an option to try.
Yeah, that would be so much easier, I think. Yeah. But then, but let's go back to dictation, because like do you do that? Because I haven't.
I'm not very good at it. So I have all the stuff for it. I have the program, Dragon Dictate, right? Or Dragon Naturally Speaking. And I was frustrated because I wasn't very good at it. So what I've started to do is I dictate a little bit every day. And I just chose to dictate, like I can dictate emails, or I can dictate a long blog post, much easier than I can do fiction. So I figure that once I get the dictation skill down, then I can start to use it for nonfiction.
One of the things I found, because like one of the things I said, like I'm quite known for my unpopular opinions about things. Well, like I can blame, like I was raised within the academic world, so I think being critical about everything, that just comes so natural to me. Just like, okay, wait a second, but how about this? So the endless question asking. So I've always been thinking, writing is such a mass. Like putting a book out is not simply writing down the words. It's also like revision, editing, revising again, editing again. It's like it's such a it's like I said, it's not just putting the words down. So for me, I always felt that getting into dictation takes away one bit, getting the first words down on the page. After that, you still have to sit with the text on the screen, have your mouse, and still. Am I correct in saying is that how it works?
Absolutely, because like a lot of people give up on dictation because they can't do everything with it. Well, or it's not perfect, but it really depends on what your goal is. So my goal for dictation, I would like to get it to where I can write. I'm not a super fast typer, and I want to try to get into this different sort of a flow state. So I feel like dictation in the long run could help me with that. But if you're worried about your hands and your wrists and your shoulders and sitting all the time, right, then your goal doesn't need to be to replace all of your typing with dictation, but it's to replace some of your typing with dictation, because people have been typing for well, not hundreds of years, but 100 years, right? And they didn't always get repetitive stress syndrome or RSI because they weren't always typing so much, so long. So now we type our emails, we type at work. Like, we have so much more typing that we do now just for a regular day-to-day basis. So if we can replace some of that with dictation, then, you know, it's just a matter of picking and choosing what you can dictate with, because to your hands it's the same. Like the stress on your hands is going to be the same whether you're typing for your second draft, or whether you're typing for your first draft, or whether you're typing for an email, or you're typing for a blog post.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, no.
Or on Facebook. So
now you just put up, like, we were talking about, like, you're talking about like actual typewriters, right? Like, so now I'm envisioning the whole old process, which was indeed like you typed the page, you pulled out the page, and then, you know, the editing is you take the pages, you go sit somewhere, you start going through the pages. So the whole process was much more, in a way, actually more dynamic than what we have now.
Absolutely.
Because we can do everything. Like, there's still people who, I used to do it as well. Like, I used to print entire manuscripts and then edit them by hand. But I'm also a bit of a, like, I love the planet. So I stopped doing that because it's a lot of paper, it's a lot of waste. But yeah, like back in the day when there was no other option, that actually gave you a different, you know, it's a more dynamic process.
Yeah, dynamic is a great word to use. We, my wife and I actually have a program called it started with a chapter in our book, Your Dynamic Office. And then we came up with a program, Your Dynamic Office. So we primarily help people who are like small offices of people who want to get more into ergonomics, right? Because the dynamic part is key. Like, we always tell people that sitting isn't going to kill you. Sitting all day is going to kill you, right? You know, sitting isn't the new smoking. Sitting still is the new smoking. So like, and people want to replace sitting with standing, but they don't realize that it's the sedentary part of it that's the problem, not the sitting itself. You could, if you stand all day, you're going to be in the same, The Industrial before the Industrial Revolution, people stood to work. There were no, I mean, chairs were expensive. You have to make a desk and a chair. That's expensive, right? So they made just a standing table, standing desks, and they would work to stand up all the time. Well, people would get varicose veins, and they would get, you know, their feet would hurt, and all these different backaches, right? So they demanded, with the unions and the guilds back in the day, that they get chairs. Well, now they can get chairs, and now they can sit all day, and they have the same but different problems.
And now we demand standing desks.
Yeah. So what people should demand is a sit-stand desk. And then they even take that even farther and you should sit one way. You should sit differently throughout the day, stand differently throughout the day, right? Like, there's no perfect position. Ergonomics is the science of getting you in a position that will keep you working all day, you know, as much as possible. It has nothing to do with, it didn't really start with doing anything directly for health. It started because people wanted to, like employers, they want you to feel good, so you'll work more, right? It's not really about the health. It's getting you in like the perfect position. So if you spend $1,000 on like the perfect chair that dials in your perfect position, right? It's going to help at first because it's a different position, and it's probably a better position than a cheap office chair. But over time, you're going to have it's underuse problems that you're going to be having, right? Lymph flow is going to stop. Your heart's going to have to work harder to keep things pumping, just because you're not moving. It could be worse in the long run. Like right now, if you're in a chair that's like not very comfortable, you're going to get up and move more just because that chair's pretty uncomfortable. And then you're going to come back and you're going to put a pillow under your butt, and you're going to, okay, that's a little bit better. Then the pillow's going to sink and you're going to take the pillow out. So like, even though it seems wrong, you could actually be healthier with like a kitchen chair where you're changing things up all the time than you would be with like the perfect ergonomic office chair.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And that's the thing, like so when I moved to Cyprus, I gave up my office. And I think I had what you would call a dynamic office. I had a standing desk. And I don't know if you've ever heard about this because it's a Dutch invention. I had a desk bike.
Okay.
So that
I've seen these little things that go under the desk, and then you can sort of pedal underneath the desk. Is that what it is?
Are you referring to the one that you have the regular chair and then the pedals? Are they like loose pedals, just like this thing you put on the floor and you put your foot on?
That's what I've seen, yeah.
Yeah, those exist as well. The desk bike is something different. You know the Dutch like to cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the desk bike, how do you call the ones if you go to the gym? You have
a stationary bike.
Yeah, so it's a stationary bike but without a steering wheel.
Oh.
So you put it underneath the standing desk. So it's an even higher position.
Okay.
Then you would have it for standing, right? So I got one of those at some point. Like I got like an IKEA standing desk. I got it's called the desk bike. It's a Dutch company, right? And I think I just checked it earlier, and they now also have a German website. They already had an English website, and I don't know how long it will be before they become. But everybody, like, because when those desks, with the treadmills, when they were hip, I was like, I have one of these, and people were like, what is that? I'm like, oh, hello from the Netherlands, like this is how we roll here. But I have to tell you, the thing is, at the beginning I was just cycling, right? And the one thing I didn't appreciate about the desk is that it has the saddle is like really big and really hard. So that would, that hurt at one point. But
is it a standard bike seat attachment? So you could just go to a bike shop and buy like a special seat?
No.
Like whatever seat you want?
No, and that's the thing. That's the one of the most, that's the biggest complaint they get. That they don't, I think you can have like a fancy old-fashioned seat. Like an old-fashioned Dutch bicycle, like we call them like the grandmother bicycle. Those
leather molded to your butt seats.
Yeah, I think something like that is an option, but not like, because I'm like, I would love to just go to a bike shop and just put another saddle on it, but that's not how it works. I'm pretty sure at one point they will do that, or they would provide something else. But what I realized then was I couldn't do cycling all the time. Sometimes I had to sit and sometimes I had to stand. Like because before I got the bike, I just did the standing, and it was very unhealthy for me because I become like, I start to lean to one side. So for the long run, like for a quick, simple email, that was fine. But if I was writing and when I was focused on writing, like my posture would be horrible, right? So the desk bike for me was a great solution. And I think because when you get tired, you can actually stop cycling as well. So it was really good for my back muscles, right? Because there's no support. So even when I was not cycling, I tended to use it as a desk chair as well. I really do miss. It's not cheap, but I have no idea how much it will be to import it to here. But it's like I sold it for good money as well. But it's a really good. I think that for me would be I think for a lot of people the solution, especially writers, because like walking and writing is so difficult. But cycling and writing, that is. And science, like
that could be an option,
yeah. Dutch scientists say that just the whole, the movement actually makes your brain go faster as well.
Interesting.
But I'll send you a picture later.
That'd be great.
Yeah, no, but it's a fabulous thing. So yeah, but it's still, I too had to step off the bike and put it aside, and then sit down for a little bit because you cannot do it all day every day.
All done,
you have to keep changing up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, was as long as it's not too heavy that you can move out of the way fairly easily, then I think a lot of the problems with people with if they set up their desk so perfectly, then it's like hard for them to change position, even though it might only take us a few seconds to change it. They're like, oh, subconsciously, they're like, oh, it's a lot of work to change it. It's a lot of work to move that stool out of the way, or a lot of work to move that bike back and forth. And which I think will make maybe the popularity. I don't know which kind of IKEA. Did you have the one with the crank or did you have the electric one?
I had the crank one because I wasn't
Yeah.
sure. I didn't want to make the investment before I knew I was actually going to do it. And that's one of the things, is that at one point I stopped using my chair altogether. I think I moved it actually. I think I moved it downstairs at one point, because for me, like the change between the height for the bike and the height for standing, there was like 10 centimeters, right? But having to put it all the way down.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah.
It can, like, there are some days, like I have a sit stand desk, but I don't always, like on most days, I'm not behind it so much that I need to change it. So like I might change it every other day. Like one day I might have standing, one day I might have sitting, because I know that I've gotten in the habit of doing other things. Like we have, I mean, it seems kind of weird, but I mean, I use a laptop. So I take my laptop and I go out into the other room and we have floor cushions and low IKEA tables that are like at varying heights, so I can just put my laptop on there and I can work there on the floor, or I can sit on a yoga bolster. Or my wife has this, one of our counters is the perfect height for her to use as a standing desk. So she will, when she's not, she will be working at her desk, and then maybe she'll go, I'm going to take a little break and go over and put it on the counter. It's the perfect height for her. So there's all sorts of different things you can do to just sort of mix it up. And I often, when I was first getting in the habit, I used the Pomodoro Method. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would, 30 minutes. So 25 minutes on, and then 5 minutes, I would get up and walk around and do something else. Either get another cup of coffee or tea, maybe do a little bit of stretching. Maybe that's when I would check my phone or my email. But I would do different things. I wouldn't just sit in that one spot and do 5 minutes of things in the same position. I would get up and go do something. Because there's a lot of studies that show that just 5 minutes of moving around, of walking, is enough to get things flowing again and increase your health, increase decrease your blood sugar and increase your insulin sensitivity. So it doesn't really take all that much.
Good.
Yeah, it's just really sitting still or standing still for the long period of time. That's the big problem.
Is that what you think why so many people, and writers obviously are included in that, are a bit hesitant when it comes to like adopting changes like this? Because they feel like if I listen to this advice, I have to go all the way. So I'm never inside anymore. I'm always outside hiking with my dragon. Like, is that it?
There is an all or nothing kind of an attitude, right? So they think that, in order to be healthy, I'm here, in order to be healthy, I have to be way over here off camera, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, there's baby steps and you can get better over time. So like maybe, like talking with Dragon, like, you can stay over here, and the ultimate is like Kevin J. Anderson, how he just has his dictation and he hikes every day up in the mountains of Colorado, and that's how he does his books.
Yeah,
right?
That's the dream, right?
That's the dream, right? So people are like, well, I can't dictate, so I'm never going to get there. So they stop. Yeah. But they could do, like we talked about earlier, they could say, oh, you know what? I type. Let's not even take writing out of it. I type for 6 hours a day, let's say.
Yeah.
Right. So how can I take some of that typing and switch it to dictation? Because that is in and of itself is a benefit to my hands and my neck and my back and my metabolism, because I can do that standing up, or I can do that pacing around the house, which is better, right? So it doesn't have to be this big thing. Now you may get good at dictation, and then you go, oh, now it started with 1 hour per day of dictation, broken up over throughout the day, right? Then it was 2 hours, then it was 3 hours. Now it's like I'm dictating almost everything. And then I'm like, oh, I can do it I got a special microphone that blocks the wind, and now I can do it walking it outside. And so there's all these different things you can do over time. But if you tell yourself that you have to be amazing at it, then you're never even gonna start.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Is that because like habits and habit creation, that's of course one of your things. That's one of your, that's one of your areas. So is that something you would say to writers as well? Like it's just another habit. Like
Yeah.
becoming more dynamic around your office is just habits that you have to, you know, one by one, you just
Well, even,
incorporate
yeah,
them.
exactly. And even when it comes to habits, pick a habit that you know you can do, right? Because like every time you try something and you fail, it makes it that much harder to start, whether it's dieting or whether it's dictation or whatever. Like if you try something and you fail, then you have a conscious and a subconscious memory of this failure. You have an emotional response to this failure. You don't want to feel a failure again. So it's that much harder to start. So what I tell my clients, with health clients, author clients, small business clients, so like when you say, like, what are you going to do? Like when we meet in a small group and I say, well, what is your goal for the next week? They list them off. I say, are you sure you can accomplish that? Like, let's find something that you know you can accomplish and then accomplish it. And if you accomplish it early, call me or email me or whatever, and we'll set up the next one, right? But
after you celebrate that accomplishment.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have, you know, like you get this dopamine hit every time you say, done, I've done this, like, dopamine hit. And it's when you fail, it's worse. So you have to consider when you set your goals, is it achievable? Right? And is it achievable right away? Like, can I, right? Like, you don't look at, hey, I want to write a novel. Like I want to write a novel in a year is a pretty good goal, right? But the thing that you should probably be focusing on is, what can I do this week? What can I realistically do this week or per day, so I can check off that little box, whether it's an actual box you're checking off or whether you, like you make a fun little calendar with stickers that you put on it. Like those are like fun little things you can do that give you that. It's probably not really a dopamine hit, but it's like, you know what I'm talking about. You know, it's like you do this thing and it gives you this little rush, and you remember that, and then you want to do the next thing.
Yeah, but that's one of the things, and I would call it dopamine hits, by the way. Like it's those, and that's one of the things. Like what I have when I coach clients is that people can be really hard on themselves, and what they believe is, if I push myself hard enough, I will get to my goal. And what I believe is, if you consistently push yourself beyond what you can actually achieve, you'll get like it's disappointment after disappointment after, and that's you get completely off track, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like and this part of it is, I think, I don't know if you do Myers-Briggs. I don't know if you do that at all. I'm an INFJ, and one of the things is that we're very realistic dreamers. So if I can think of something, I can achieve that, right? There's also people who like they want to have everything, but they don't know how to get there, and they start off dreaming way too big. For me, it's like people always have to tell me, how about you step it up a little bit? Why do you keep playing small? Like maybe you could do a little more, right? But one of the benefits is that I have a plan, and I always exceed my own plans because I'm done. And then, oh, that's great. Oh, now I can do something else. Oh, look at that. Oh, I can do this as well. Oh, what a productive day.
Right.
I think in the end, that is more helpful, because then you see how much you can actually do than having this, if I just, sit down and focus, I can do all of this. And if you get to only half of it, you're like, damn it. I'm like, yeah, that's a complete, because at that point you're already telling yourself that you failed, that you suck, and I'm like, I don't know if that, and I do think it's particular personalities who do it one way or the other. But yeah, so this goes the same with like introducing healthy habits. Example from my own, like, so I move here. I'm in a very tiny house. My desk is absolutely horrid. But here, 99% of the time, you rent your place furnished.
Right.
So if you want to do something else, you have to pay for it yourself first and foremost, but you also have to sort of like hello landlord, would you please remove this furniture out of
Right.
my house? Yeah.
They're like, why don't you need that? Like,
Yes, like it's a desk, like it's useful. It's like the chair is falling apart. So at one point, of course, I started feeling physically the effects of no longer having my, my nice desk and my desk bike. And I was like, damn it. But perks of living in the Mediterranean, I have a pool outside of my door. So what I started doing was doing laps. And of course, I looked up how many laps I would have to do per day to, stay fit. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that because I'm able to swim. I've always been able to swim, but I've never swum like that, just laps in a pool. So
I find lap swimming very boring.
But I do a lot of thinking in those moments. Yeah, it's very nice actually.
Yeah, I have to put an Alexa out by the pool.
Yeah, it's like, hey Alexa, play me something nice. No, but that's the thing. Like when I started, I just told myself, okay, you're gonna do laps, and you're gonna see when you're tired, and you're gonna be honest. And I think there was like 16 laps, which is nothing because it's not a massive pool, right? But I knew I had to do about 40 a day to sort of have the equivalent of what is good. But by the end of summer, I got to, what was it, like 32 or something, and then like couldn't get into the pool anymore because it was officially like I was the last one in the pool, and then it was like too cold, you couldn't swim anymore. Still did some at the beach, but you can't really count. But that's also it's also so for me now I walk more. I try to walk more because it's actually quite cold right now. Like it's been colder here over the past week than it's in Northern Europe.
Okay.
Which is quite surprising since we're in the middle of the Mediterranean. But it's been interesting because we don't do central heating. But yeah, so it's also I think about trying to find ways around your circumstances or okay, what can you do? Like for the first months, I was like, I can no longer do this. I'm like, now I'm doomed. And it's just like rethinking as well, maybe a little bit. Like, okay, so what can I do? What can I do?
It's also like, what different things can you do? Because you don't need to be a swimmer to be healthy, and you don't need to be a walker to be healthy or a runner to be healthy. But if you swam a little bit, ran a little bit, walked a little bit,
yeah, I have my yoga mat on the floor.
Cycled a little bit, like all these all movement matters, right? So like all these things, they add up to different things, right?
So it's the same, like you don't have to do a 10K hike every day.
No. And so like the one area where I think most people could benefit is finding a way to walk more, because like we, humans are, built to walk, right? And our lifestyle has changed so much that we don't need to walk as much. So there's so many more benefits to walking from long-term and short-term health than just weight loss. People don't walk as much as they should because they're like, well, it doesn't burn very many calories. But it's not really all about the calories.
Yeah,
it's about, staying healthy, keeping your lymph glands flowing, right? Keeping them, moving around, cardiovascular health. There's like cardiovascular health comes from so many different parts of our exercise and movement, not just going out there and running hard. So yeah, and also people who are worried about osteoporosis and osteopenia, like the walking that you do has such a tremendous effect on this. And because it's these vibrations of your heel hitting the ground, that tell your bones that they don't tell your bones, but it triggers bone growth. And so it triggers for you to maintain your muscle mass and your bone mass, but also to build more if you don't have enough. Your body wants to have this right amount. Like you're not going to build more than you need, but if you don't have enough, it will trigger it up because it wants to. Your body senses how much you have and what it needs to be healthy, and it will try to get it back up there.
So for a sustainable, healthy life, like walking, and I'm not necessarily talking hiking, right? You don't have to go to the mountains or whatever. Just like walking more. That is already that goes a long way.
Yep.
Yeah, but I do think that's it, like, because I think people also think, okay, so if you want to be healthy, you have to like sweat, right? No. And that's for me, like I've been into yoga for years, always stayed clear of like the really heavy flow yoga, because I push myself a lot. So I really don't need my yoga teacher to tell me to give a little more. I need my yoga teacher to tell me, and you're done for the day. And I would just breathe and we relax all those muscles. That's the kind of yoga that I need. And I do, like, my mat is always on the floor in my living room. So in between doing things, I can, do a few poses. But that's, I think, the same, like what I learned from doing yoga that way is also like, it's so beneficial to the body. Just this, the gentle stretching.
Yeah.
And I feel like walking does the same. For me, it feels like a gentle stretch. And it's actually, what people don't know is that it's a really good way to get rid of emotions as well, or to process emotions.
Yeah.
Like when you're really angry.
Yeah.
For a walk. But even if you have like if you have like a migraine, like I always got the advice from my physical therapist, if you have a headache, you go out, you go for a walk, and not for a slow one, but like, you just, because then you shake it off, just the vibrations.
Yeah.
Like shake it off. So it does much more than just burning calories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about the treadmill and desk bike, and that's all very expensive stuff, right? That's very expensive.
Yeah.
So do you have any practical tips, like like that costs virtually nothing or nothing, that people can do today or can order something? Like I, for example, what I have myself is like, I have a laptop standard, and I have an ergonomic keyboard, which is small, and I have an ergonomic mouse. So my hand is not like this, but my hand is like this. And it's right next to the keyboard, so I'm not like going weird on it. So that's all what I have. That I know that was reasonably priced. Are there any things that you're like, I've seen this work for people, I do this works, tips that people can just start implementing?
Yeah, I have a laptop riser. So this is my
that's
laptop.
What I meant.
So, and it's called Nextstand, NEX.
Is that the small one you can just fold?
It folds up, so you can travel with it, right?
Yeah, so mine is massive. It doesn't weigh anything, but it's massive. And I think Joanna Penn has that one as well, the one you just...
Yes, she has the same one I have, right?
Yeah.
And so then I have like one of these, like just a Bluetooth keyboard.
Yeah,
right?
So I would call that an ergonomic keyboard because it doesn't have the keypad.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's smaller.
And then I just have a little mouse, and any sort of mouse works. But so it allows me to just sort of, and you don't need a Bluetooth keyboard. Like if you're at home all the time, you can have a physical, physically attached keyboard and mouse as well, right? Some people like a more substantial keyboard. I don't like if I could get a keyboard that's exactly like my laptop keyboard, I would be happy, but they're really expensive. This is nice. This is portable, and it's inexpensive. So if I'm traveling with it and it breaks, it's not really the end of the world. It's about $30 American.
Oh, that's very good.
Right? The mouse is like $15, $20, so it's not too bad. And
is that a special mouse though?
No. This one's just a Bluetooth, a Microsoft Bluetooth mouse. I got it because it's red, and
not an important.
And it's yes, and so that's about it. And then I have the Nextstand riser, which is about, I think it was $35. Okay. So. And it's a European company, so it's probably easy to get in Europe as well. And but I can travel with that. When I went to go to writing conferences, and I'm going to be someplace for a few days, I bring it with me and set it up so I can work in there. And it gives you the ability to use the laptop in a different way. So it's all about being dynamic and having different positions. So the riser gives me this, but I can also use the keyboard when I'm like out and I'm actually writing on my lap. Those are two things. There's a tool that I use. I don't have it here with me today, but it sits on it's called a Backjoy. One word, BACKJOY. And what it is, it's like a little thing that cups your back, and it's wobbly, and it sits on your chair. And what it does is it forces your pelvis to be forward, so you're not like slouching way back into your chair.
So are you sitting on it, or is it the one that goes in the small of your back?
You're sitting on it.
You're sitting, okay.
And it doesn't have it has an unstable base. So if you're on like if you're on a bench or a solid, like a wooden desk, a wooden table, like a wooden kitchen chair or something, it forces you to lean forward a little bit, because that's a healthier position for your low back, to be leaning forward rather than slumping backwards. So, and those are $25. Here in America, you can get them at Target and at Bed Bath and Beyond. So those are good, inexpensive things to get. And it's also really good to take in your car, because a lot of cars have this very buckety seat that's actually, it's comfortable, but it's actually bad for your back to be in that position for a long period of time. And lumbar supports aren't always enough. So this brings you up and tilts your pelvis forward. So that's another thing you can do. And you don't have to do all of these things, right? So yes, if you have a laptop riser, you do need an external keyboard and a mouse, but you don't need to, but the back joy is something you can get with a regular computer. You can get, I can't really show you, but I can pick it up. So I don't have a regular chair. I have this.
You have one of those. Yes, I know.
Yes. Those. So there's a variety. I like this one because so now I made it bigger, made it taller. So this part of it expands. So I can be, it's called a stool, but it's I'm a little bit taller now. So it's another way you can do, like, adjust things differently. So it can be slightly different height. And the benefit of this one, see, like it's kind of wobbling. It's not super wobbly. Like, you can balance on it. Like, my feet are off the ground right now, but it keeps you from being in one locked in position.
Yeah, and it keeps the muscles working constantly. Like not the tiny muscles, right? They keep the whole system. Right.
Yeah. And one of the things you can do, like, I can lean forward on it. So now, like, the stool is actually like at an angle, because the bottom is curved, right? So that's just one other option, like a wobbly stool. This one's called Learniture. I can send you a link to it.
Yeah, send me all the links. And I think the good thing is that IKEA now sells most of these things. Like, IKEA also has a stool. It's not the same, but they have a stool that is also, like, for the in between standing and sitting position. So you have a bit of support, but you're not entirely. So it's not, you don't have to go to this expensive shop with all these, kind of like high-tech stuff. Like, it's IKEA, man.
Yeah. Well, some people even like to sit on a Swiss ball. I don't know if you call it, I don't know what you call it there. You're more closer to Switzerland, but it's like an exercise ball that people do on their back.
We would call the yoga ball.
Yeah. So it's the big ball, and they come in different sizes. And when you're sitting on it in front of us, this desk is a little taller, so I'd have to have a really big ball. So you'd be back bouncy, right? Yeah. So it does a couple things. It keeps you, like, your body more engaged. It's a little bit, again, more to keep using the word dynamic. And the key is that's pretty inexpensive, because you're probably going to use it for other things too, right? You can use it for exercise as well, yoga, and
you can get it at Target as well, I'm guessing.
Yes, you can. And when you get these things, make sure that again, it's not all or nothing, right? You can have a regular chair, and you can also use this thing, and you can switch them in and out, right? When you try it, one of the things, I'm going to use the standing desk as an example, but this applies to any of these tools. When you switch to one of these tools, your brain is splitting its attention between this new tool and what you're working on. So you may not be able to stand to work and write your novel at first, because enough of your brain is cycling, trying to figure out how to be comfortable standing in your new position of your arms and how high your lap. It's all these things are going on, but you might very well be able to answer all of your emails like that. Yeah. Because that comes more naturally. It's not a creative thing to write email. Same thing with the sitting on the yoga ball, right? At first, you're like, I can't write. This is so distracting, right? Writing my novel, I can't do it, right? But maybe you can do it writing your email, and then you can roll the ball out of the way, put your regular chair back down, and say, now I'm getting down to business, right? Yeah.
Well, like I said, that's one of the reasons why I love the desk bike so much, because I could actually, that comes with an app, so you can actually track, like, how much calories You burn. That's the thing is when I got the desk bike, that in the next 2 months I lost 2 sizes.
Oh wow,
That was
that's
quite.
awesome.
That was quite without doing anything else about my diet, right? It's like it was quite intense.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing is indeed that, and like what I realized is that when I was revising or editing, that's fine. But when I had to think about something, like I do a lot of editing for academics. That's like my academic background, sort of, it's still with me. So I do a lot of dissertations, mostly with non-native speakers of English. So sometimes you really have to go like, okay, so this is such a Dutch or German way of saying things, or Italian or Spanish. Like, okay, so how would you best, like, you have to get into the author a little bit, like, okay, so how would they say it? What do they actually mean? And I always realized in those moments that I was no longer peddling.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But that's actually, for me, that was actually, so at the beginning I was like, what? Like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not burning any calories. But it's also, it's part of the dynamic, because as soon as you get back into the whole, the sort of the flow of editing, my legs would automatically like start pedaling again.
We've all experienced the thing where we're listening to songs that we like on the radio, and we get closer to our destination, and we're like looking for the address, and we're like, oh, I have to turn the radio down, because like your brain needs less input in one area so it can accept the other input.
People laugh at, like, there's memes making jokes about that, and I'm like, I'm exactly that person. I'm like, yeah. I'm entering the big city now. I have to turn down the volume because of what? But that's the thing, because you have to you have to focus.
Mm-hmm. And most people are like that in some parts of their life. They just don't, like, they may not be driving in the radio, but it might be something else. It might be, typing, writing your novel, or maybe you have to write your poetry sitting down in a super comfy chair, or like my daughter, she does all of her her creative writing laying down on her stomach on the floor on paper. Like, she's like, I can't get into it when I'm behind my laptop. So
yeah, so it's just about getting to know like what works for you.
All of our brains work differently, our bodies work differently, and we have this, connection, this like sort of somatic connection to these different things that we don't always understand, but we just kind of got to go with it. And we can change them slowly over time, but we don't always want to.
Yeah. But that's the thing in general, right? Like, when we want to change some things, it's like, I always prefer like the slow burn, because that's, in the end, it's more sustainable. So instead of like changing your whole life around, just take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and then see where you end up.
Exactly.
Right, and the same goes with implementing these healthy habits into your life. Okay, so before we end, tell people where they can find you, and also, like, I know you you offer packages for like for offices and stuff. So tell us a bit more about that. Like, what can people expect? So they know where to find you, and if they're like, okay, this sounds really cool, but I would love some help with actually, like, how, like, can I just show you what my office looks like? What can I do here? I think that would be really useful.
Yeah. So so you can find, if you just want general, like if you're interested in losing weight or something like that, you can easily find me at eatmovelive52.com. That's where all of our general health and wellness stuff is. And since science has determined that most authors are very close to human, all that stuff works, right? So, but on the other hand,
so close.
They're so close, right?
Yep.
We've almost got it. And so then also I have another site called Indestructibleauthor.com, and that's where I focus more on author health and productivity. So over there, you can sign up and you can get like 5 steps to greater author health and productivity. You can tie those two together. You can be healthier and more productive at the same time. And so that's fairly simple to do. I do offer. We have a program where we work with people in offices to help them get their desks dialed in and what they can do, right? So both from a coaching perspective, but happily to offer your listeners or your viewers like a free consult. So if they go there, there will be a website. There's a thing there. You can get on there, and I can, like you just said, what we typically do. If you're interested in doing some of these things, we have plenty of programs for you to help you with your hands and your neck, your low back, right? But a lot of that comes down to, in addition to that, getting your workstation or your workspace sort of dialed in or even slightly improved can go a huge way to long-term health and writing productivity as well.
But like even the right keyboard or the right mouse can take away so many symptoms.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else that I had on my list? Oh yeah. I had this one question, and then we'll close off. Okay, so because like I have the same, right? Like as a coach, you speak a certain truth, and that can be a bit in the face sometimes, like can be. So I was just wondering, what is it that the people you work with, whether that's individuals and writers, maybe you have an example for both, what is it that they typically really, really don't want to hear you say? Like, what is it that they go like,
okay,
of all things, no, like what is it?
So
like,
there's one thing that I have to be very careful to talk about, because people unsubscribe or unfollow just by mentioning it, just by suggesting it, right? So it is getting more sleep.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Because you're asking them to change their belief system, their whole lifestyle, right? They have like everything's dialed in. I love staying up late, either staying up late, right? Like authors sometimes think that they do their best work late at night, right? And also that's when they're tired, and that's when they want to binge watch Netflix or whatever, or Disney Plus now, right?
Yeah.
So
all of them these days.
All of them, right?
HBO.
So and you just get on this thing, right? And so it is very possible that an author, a night owl, does do their best work late at night, right? But so even suggesting that they try to change something, right? They're like, unsubscribe. Like they don't want to hear it, right? Because they on some level, they probably feel like I'm right, but they're unwilling to change. That's something that they're unwilling to change at this point. And they're afraid that I'm going to bring it up again. And they're going to like, right?
Do you think it's because they, on some level, believe that is their writing time? That is the only time they can do anything useful?
Sometimes there are people that legitimately, there are people that legitimately, that is their best time to write. Like if they have kids and their kids go to bed early, their spouse goes to bed early, their partner goes to bed early, and they are up late writing, that may be the only time they can do it, right?
But also for some people, like, do you believe that? Like I'm very much a morning person. Everything I can get done before 9 a.m. is my best work.
Well, there are many studies that show that if you take the same amount of time and you roll it back to where, like, so let's say somebody wants to be up for 16 hours per day. Is that right now? Yeah, 16 hours per day, right?
I think that sounds healthy, yeah.
So if they get up at 10 o'clock in the morning and they go 16 hours, right? That's the night owl person, right?
Yeah.
So they get X amount of work done. So there are studies that show that if they took that back and rolled it back, so they got up at 8 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning, still were awake for the same number of hours, that they would get more done, and that stuff in the morning would be better.
Yeah, people don't want to hear that. I don't even, like, I'm a morning person, I don't want to hear that.
Well, they don't want to hear it for a couple of reasons. It's similar with, it's the I'm doing fine. It's working for me. Like people say, I'm doing fine in the health industry, the writing, I'm doing fine, it's working for me. Sometimes I'm different. Like I've tried,
I'm the exception.
I'm the exception, right? Yeah. And it is possible, right? But with our health clients, like if they go a significant amount of time with a cleaned up diet, they're like, oh, you know what? I thought I was doing great, but in retrospect, I wasn't, because when I reintroduce this food, my eyes start watering. And I remember now my eyes always used to water back then. Or when I eat this thing, I'm always like, this throat. And I'm like, you know what? My coworker used to tell me I did that all the time. And I stopped doing that when I went on this different diet. So they were doing fine, but they don't realize how much more fine they could be. So an author could be killing it, right? Doing great, writing from 10 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning, writing 4 hours. But what if they got up earlier and were able to do the same amount of work that they did in 4 hours then in 2 hours in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, how would that change their life? And what if that work was better? So they could be doing fine. Now, I will be honest that some people, you know, they've been doing it such a long time that they have adapted to that, and that that may now be their new normal.
Yeah.
But people don't want to hear the potential. Like, I usually suggest it to, like, people are like, oh, I'm just dragging. Like, the people who complain all the time about being tired all the time said, like, the first step is don't try to get more sleep. Well, I mean, I want them to get more sleep, but I've stopped saying get more sleep. I've started to say, let's optimize the sleep that you do get, right? You don't need to get more sleep. Maybe that comes down the road after they realize that the changes in their sleep patterns can help. But instead of getting more sleep, say, hey, instead of going, you know, bring it back 1 hour, get up, go to bed 1 hour earlier and get up 1 hour earlier. Same amount of time, right? Now, how did that change, right? And most of the stuff is because of our biological tie-in to the day-night cycle, right? We've been on this planet for such a long time that, you know, before a couple hundred years ago, there were candles a couple hundred years ago, but like candles were, you know, people weren't burning candles all night long just to stay up and write. Like, they would do it to bridge the gap until they could go to bed.
Yeah.
So soon after darkness fell, they would start to get ready for going to bed, and then they would get up again close to when it was dawn, because that was when light would be. So we're really in tune to that, and that's how, like it or not, that's how it is. That's how we tend to do our best.
It's just not how our system works. Like our systems, like, but not
Right.
the system.
Yeah. Well, there's also a thing in, this applies to authors as well, but so a lot of my clients have problems with snacking and junk food late at night.
Oh, right? No, all day for me.
Okay, all right. But the majority of my people, they might crave these things in the morning, but they don't eat them.
That is true.
Right? What happens is when they watch TV at night, or they're working at night, they're like, oh, you know, like, I'm tired and I'm hungry, you know, I'm gonna go get it. And they don't pick like a chicken breast, they, you know, out of the refrigerator. They pick crackers or cookies or ice cream, right?
Yeah.
So there's a thing called decision fatigue. And there's just two aspects of it. One is every decision we make throughout the day makes it that much harder to make a better decision, because we're tired. Even though we don't feel the tired type of fatigue, it's harder to make a good decision the more decisions you make. A lot of business people, not that he's super popular. Well, let's take two people, Barack Obama, Mark Zuckerberg, right? They have extremely simple tastes in clothing for their day-to-day activities. Like Mark Zuckerberg has like the same khakis and gray shirt. Barack Obama, when he was the president, he had two suits, a gray suit and like a black suit, or a gray suit and a blue suit. And all of the ties matched, all of the shirts matched. He could reach into his closet with his eyes closed.
Yeah, and he was fine. Yeah.
And he didn't have to think about it, because that was a decision, right? He didn't have to make a decision. So all of these things, and he set up his day so he'd because he wanted to make his important decisions in the morning as well, when after the decision fatigueometer or whatever had reset from sleep. So the longer we go, the harder it is. And also the more tired we are. And right, the harder it is too. So just by shifting things back, you can make tremendous strides there.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know. It makes so much sense. I didn't know it was an actual thing. I knew that Obama did it like that. But I can see how that. Really
and then this decision fatigue and this tiredness late at night can affect authors as well, because if you sit down to watch one episode of a show on Netflix, that's reasonable. That's pretty reasonable. And you tell yourself, I'm only going to watch one, then I'm going to go to bed because I got to get up and I'm going to write in the morning, right? And then you're like, well, it's kind of a cliffhanger, so I'm going to watch another one. Oh, it's kind of keep going, right?
I sometimes feel like I'm the only one who doesn't do that.
Well, I turned off the thing so it doesn't automatically start the next show. So that's one thing. So you have to make a conscious effort to push the button. So
because Netflix wants you. Netflix wants to suck you in. That's how they make their money.
Yeah. But you can go to sleep, and hours later, like you fall asleep in front of the TV, and hours later it's going to still be playing, right? And then eventually it'll say, "Are you still watching?"
It is, and I'm so proud. That has never in my life happened to me. My TV nor Netflix have ever asked me whether I was dead and still doing this thing. I'm like, no, I'm good. Yeah.
But if you want to turn off this feature, you have to do it from your computer, from a desktop. So you have to log into Netflix from your desktop, and then there's a setting of automatically starting the next show that you can turn off now.
I think that's gonna save lives. Just know.
Because one of the things is, like, if you some people will watch 4 or 5 hours in the morning at night, meaning well, they mean to only watch one, but then they end up watching 4 or 5 hours. So I said, well, like, why don't you, like, if it's so important to you to watch this show, why don't you set up your alarm and get up early to watch Netflix? And they're like, well, that's stupid. Like, why? I wouldn't do that. Like, oh, why is it okay to do it late at night, but it's not okay to do it to get up early in the morning? And they don't really have a good answer. It's because decision fatigue makes it that much easier to do. And then after so much time of doing this, then it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
Now it's ingrained, and now it does seem silly because you've associated binge watching or binge reading or whatever, binge anything, with late at night versus in the morning. And in the morning, people get up, their decision meter, their decision fatigueometer has been zeroed out. So they have all the willpower in the world. They get up, go to the gym, they make a healthy breakfast, they write their words.
Slay the day, as they say.
Exactly,
these days.
Exactly. No one says I'm going to slay the night. Well, maybe that Dracula does.
Yeah, I can imagine. So maybe some characters in your urban fantasy.
That's right.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for this. This was really useful. And I think, just the practical tips. And also, I think knowing that it doesn't have to be like $1,000 of investments to just, set up a better office system. Like, I think at one point I saw a picture of you. Was that you with you had guests in the house, so you put a box somewhere and you put your laptop on it, and then you had a standing desk? Was that you?
Oh yeah my office is our guest room as well. So, like, when we have enough guests over, they stay in here. So I take we have a laundry counter in the other room, and it's got a nice window there, so it's nice. And and I just set up there, and I can just stand there and do it with this little box.
But I did the same. Like, before I had the laptop stand, or the razor that I have now, I had another one that didn't actually raise it. It was just, it only made your laptop go like this. So it raised it a little bit, but it couldn't actually, like, this one goes, whatever you want to do with it. I had like 2 shoe boxes or something, like, and then just, stacked it on top of my desk and just tried to. So yes, there is creative ways of going about this. You don't have to spend like you don't need, not even hundreds of dollars.
Absolutely. Like, when I travel, a lot of times my wife and I will set up like, when we go to an Airbnb, like, we don't take a lot of stuff with us to set things up. And figure, like, we're going to be there for a couple of days. We may just be creative. So, right, it's kind of fun to take the furniture that they have, like buckets and containers or stools or whatever, and you like set up these things, and we take a picture of it and put it on Instagram, like that. Because you can have a dynamic office anywhere, and it may not be perfect, but changing things up is better than always being in the perfect position, because there is no perfect position for long.
Yeah. So even if it looks like it's going to be imperfect, just go for it, because that is better than being in the same position, whether that's considered a perfect or an imperfect position.
Yep.
You have to sort of like keep dynamic is the word we've been using. Hey, thanks again so much. I'm gonna make sure I'll get all the links from you. Also a link to your Instagram, because I think for inspiration that might be really great for people,
cool.
Especially when you are a bit overwhelmed. Like, I have this in my house, or I have this tiny apartment. What can I do? This is be creative. But we're creative people. Be creative about this. So I'll get all the links, and I'm going to put them in the notes, so everybody can find you and start becoming a little bit healthier every day in their practice.
Awesome.
Thank you
Great.
so
I look
much.
forward to connecting with your viewers, and I promise not to talk too much about sleeping more.
Yeah, because honestly, I'm such a morning person, but even I went like, no, you did not just say that. So that, and I know that, like, I am that person, and even I don't want to hear it. So I can see how it's sensitive to people who are not like me. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a good one. It's a good question. I mean, I love the answer, and you are right. Like, I know you are. Okay. Hey, thanks so much for being here again.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.